Good evening, Winthrop, and welcome to the Winthrop Town Council meeting of April 20th, 2021. This meeting is being held remotely, and it will be shown on WCAT Live, and there will be rebroadcast throughout the week. Before I forget, I want to wish my wife a very happy anniversary tonight. I know this is not what you want to be doing tonight, but for the good of the town. I'm going to give you numbers to call in. The call-in number for tonight's meeting is 1-301-715-8592 with an ID number of 844-967-40096 pound. Would you please take a roll call, Denise?
Councilor Ruggiero.
Here.
Councilor Flockhart.
Here.
Councilor DeMarco.
Here.
Councilor Terry.
Yeah.
Councilor Honan.
Yep.
Councilor Conti. Councilor Farino.
Here.
Vice President Christopher.
Here.
President Boncory.
Here. There being a quorum, I will call the meeting to order, and I will ask Councilor DeMarco to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilor. All right, moving forward, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the April 6, 2021 meeting as circulated.
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Are there any questions, additions, deletions, omissions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye when your name is called.
Councilor Ruggiero.
Yes.
Councilor Flockhart.
Yes.
Councilor DeMarco.
Yes.
Councilor Terry.
Yes.
Councilor Honan.
Yes.
Councilor Conti. Councilor Farino.
Yes.
Vice President Christopher.
Yes.
President Boncory.
Yes. Minutes are approved. Under general information and recommendations, I just want to point out that tonight the town manager will be presenting a budget, and as well as that, we will be having a spring forum, which will take place immediately after this meeting at 7 p.m. And anybody will be able to ask questions of any department they would like to hear from. All right, we have no public hearings tonight. I will now open up public comment. And again, the call-in number is 1-301-715-8592 with an ID number of 844-967-40096 pound. We are now open for public comment. Is there any public comment at this time? See,
I don't have any hands up at this time.
oh, this might be the shortest meeting on record. All right. Moving on, correspondence. I believe we did get quite a few correspondence about the middle school district, and that correspondence will be taking place when we have the joint meeting on Thursday night. Again, we are having another meeting on Thursday evening, which is a joint meeting with the planning board to discuss and accept their recommendation, the middle school zoning. Okay, that will be Thursday night at 7. Okay. Moving on, committee reports. Finance committee, I think, Jim, I think you're the only committee that met this week.
Finance committee meeting, finance committee just met and also met last week. The items have been the trash and potential trash fee, along with, there was one item that was sent to us on authorizing the unpaid bills of a prior year, and that was passed unanimously. for a positive recommendation. That equates to $5,487. It's nothing out of the ordinary. It's items that, not specific items, but items come up every year and they have to clean them out for accounting practices. We did continue. We met this evening at 5:30, and there was some miscommunication there with me thinking that our meeting was at 7, so I thought we had like an hour and a half, and we really only had a half hour. So we did not, which we probably even with an hour and a half wouldn't have come out to a final conclusion. But we have some new information on trash fees and how, we talked, I talked to the town of Ashland, and they have something relatively similar to what we have been discussing. So have some information from them. We have some new numbers. The DPW was extremely helpful and literally following Capital Waste around last week and got some new numbers for us to base our recommendations on. But we are going to have an additional meeting before our next council meeting. It has not been posted yet, but it will definitely be before our next council meeting, and enabling us to come back with a recommendation. So that is still on hold right now, still tabled in committee.
Okay, thank you. So that will stay on hold business for the next meeting as well.
Please.
Town managers report.
Larissa, is Meredith Hurley on this meeting? Or yes, she is.
Yes,
I would
she
invite
is.
Director Hurley on to present, and then otherwise the majority of my information is in the budget and the spring forum presentation.
Hi, everybody.
Hi,
Sorry. How's it going? I am just going to switch over real quick to, I don't have very much information to kind of share, but hold on one sec. It'll be quick updates tonight. All right, so just to give you, here we are for today with our case counts, 2,235 confirmed cases, 35 deceased, 45 currently isolated, and 2,155 recovered. The state made a snafu and did not publish the incidence rates and percent positive. So I'm not going to share those with you tonight, but I do want to share with you how many folks have been vaccinated, which is, we currently, as of last Thursday, have 47.8% of Winthrop residents have received at least their first dose of vaccination. So that's just over 9,000 residents. As of Monday, also, I just want to remind people that everybody over the age of 16 is currently eligible to be vaccinated in Massachusetts. So I know that you guys have kind of a busy agenda tonight, so I didn't want to take up too much time with the redundancy of, where to call and all of those. So happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Meredith, through the president, just a quick question. Are we still, because I noticed the last couple of days we haven't received the weekday updates. Is that gone now?
No, yesterday was a holiday, and my laptop actually kind of quasi crashed and I had to reset it. So today's numbers will be coming up, but the ones that I just shared with you are the most updated numbers for today.
Awesome, thank you.
And do we have the breakdown of the demographics of who's gotten the shot and who hasn't?
Yeah, so in terms of the demographics, 44.1% of our Caucasian population have been vaccinated. 45.2% of the African-American population in Winthrop has been vaccinated. 43.7% of our Hispanic population has been vaccinated, and 61.5% of our Asian population has been vaccinated.
Oh, so that's good. Everybody is well over 40%. That's very good. We're moving it through everybody. Thank God. Councilor DeMarco.
Very quickly, through the president to Director Hurley, what about the age breakdown of the vaccinations? Do we have that info?
I don't have that info. Okay. I know that the state is saying that 80% of those over the age of 75 have been vaccinated at this point. But that's the only age demographic that they've been able to give us solid numbers on to this point.
Yeah, we just opened up to the under 55s, Rob, so it's going to be a while before we get age demographics.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions of Meredith? Thank you, Meredith. Oh, sorry, Councilor Terry.
More of a comment, but I just want to thank Meredith and the school department, because it seems like I'm sure there's been a few hiccups here and there, but it seems for the most part, since the schools are back in full session, they've done an incredible job. So thanks out to the principals, the superintendent, and the staff for doing a great job, because I haven't heard of any outbreaks or anything like that. Can you just confirm that, Meredith?
Yeah, no, we have, there's been no clusters so far in any of the schools. I do want to remind people, just because it bears, you know, kind of a reminder that, you know, this is April break, and the school, as much as the governor has now with the travel order made it an advisory, but for those students enrolled in our public schools, they are still under the auspice that if they have traveled, they need to be tested prior to returning to school at least 72 hours, at least 72 hours prior to returning to the state, or quarantine until a negative test result has come back.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, well, that's all of my update, unless you have questions.
Thank you so much, Meredith, for the great job that you always do.
No problem, guys. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Farino.
Yeah, I have a question for Austin. How are we coming along with the BART grant for the conservation agent? Have they hired anybody for that yet, Austin?
For the North Suffolk Regional Office,
yes,
for common resiliency, we're actually having final interviews tomorrow for those. Winthrop, Chelsea, and Revere together are going to be interviewing for that.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Terry.
Thank you. And just a quick thing, and I guess this is the most appropriate time anyway, and I don't know if I'll have another opportunity, but there was an email from the town manager on the CFO pursuing other avenues. And I just want to take a minute to extend my sincere thanks for the job that she has done here. She's and has been extremely professional all the time, has been a pleasure to work with. Her knowledge has been extremely valuable to us. I know I'm going to miss her, and I wish her nothing but the best in her future endeavors.
I agree 100%. Anna, I think you are leaving at the end of the month. We won't be having another meeting. So I want to as well publicly thank you for all the good work that you have done while you were here in Winthrop. I know it was a hard job. It was a heavy job. You had a lot of heavy lifting to do because you didn't have the staff that you really needed for a long time. And I want to thank you for everything that you have done for the town of Winthrop.
Thank you, Council President, and thank you, Councilor Lettieri, and the rest of the council. I really appreciate the kind words. It's been a pleasure working with you and working for the town of Winthrop. I hope that we'll get through the budget tonight and sort of leave on a hopeful foot to kind of pass the information along for the Finance Committee and the council to take that and run with it for the next couple of months. But it's been a true pleasure and honor to get to work for the town, and I sincerely appreciated working with all of you. Thank you for all the hard questions. Keep me on my toes. Appreciate it.
Any chance you'll change your mind?
Unfortunately, yep. Not. It's final now. It's final now on the other end, so I can back out.
Had to keep one last hard question in there for you. We're gonna miss you.
Before the budget, do you have any other reports, Austin?
No, I do not.
I'd like to ask a question about the dog park and where we are on it. What's holding that up from being started?
Director Kyle is on here. I think he could give an update about the maintenance facility and the dog park.
Absolutely. So the dog park specifications have been completed a while ago. The biggest holdup has been the structural drawings for the foundation work for the maintenance shed. We did finally receive those late last week. Our engineer is integrating those into the, merging them with the specifications for the dog park so that we can complete the bid documents. And we're hoping to get this awarded by the end of May.
Okay. Hoping it will be done before that, but let's get it moving when we can. Okay, any other questions for the town manager before we hit the budget? All right, Austin, you're on as far as budget.
Larissa or WCA TV, if you want to queue up that video, we can go from there.
Sure. Does it matter that we advertise this for 7 o'clock for the spring forum?
This was part of the spring forum.
Is it part of the spring forum? Oh, all right. Is there anything else that we want to do with the town manager right now? Town manager?
No.
No other questions for town manager? We'll move on to the school department update then. And there was no school committee meeting this past week. School is out on vacation. Everybody's on vacation. I understand, Councilor DeMarco, you're on vacation with your children. And hopefully other people are enjoying some of their vacation as well. The Winthrop schools have been doing well. There's been a great influx of flexibility and you know, everything has been working. Now, while this vacation is taking place, school is being prepped, getting new desks, chairs, and everything is going to be much more comfortable when they come back after the school vacation. But everything so far has worked wonderful. And I want to congratulate our football team. I guess they were the NEC champions with their 4 wins and unfortunately 1 loss. And I also want to congratulate the soccer teams because they both have having wonderful winning seasons. All right, let's move on to old business. And there was a motion under old business that the town council authorized the payment of $5,487 for prior year unpaid bills. Councilor Terry, you want to take the lead on that?
Sure. The council, the finance committee did meet earlier on this with positive recommendation, unanimous positive recommendation. These are 3 bills from prior years, you know, relatively small bills that total $5,487. This is nothing out of the ordinary. This is done on a yearly basis just to clear up the books, make sure everything is in good order. So we do have positive recommendation on this.
All right, the motion has come from the finance committee with positive recommendation. It does not need a second. Is there any discussion on it? Are there any questions on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of authorizing the payment of $5,487 to pay prior year's bills, please signify by saying aye when your name is called.
Councilor Ruggiero?
Yes.
Councilor Flockhart?
Yes.
Councilor DeMarco?
Yes.
Councilor Terry?
Yes.
Councilor Honan?
Yes.
Councilor Conti? Councilor Farino?
Yes.
Vice President Christopher?
Yes.
President Boncory?
Yes. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is town council employee evaluations. This was put over from last month because some people had not had an opportunity to digest what the committee had done. So DeMarco, do you want to take the lead on this?
Sure. So as always, we always evaluate the town employees in March. As I said last week, we reviewed Dick Higston as well as Denise, and we rated them both 5 out of 5. Those were both unanimous votes. In addition, we also gave the town clerk, Carla Vitale, an incomplete based on things beyond her control. And finally, we took up the town manager as well, and we rated him a 4 out of 5. That was on a 2-to-1 vote.
Okay. Is there any questions from any councils? Or any councils want to add anything on the evaluations? Councilor Terry.
Thank you. And I want to thank the committee for, and Councilor DeMarco for leading that committee. I do know that the councils did have an opportunity to put in their evaluations of each of the employees also. Not asking for them to be read tonight, but I want to make sure that they're going to be in the record and available for the public. Is that accurate?
Yes, if any counselor has submitted a personal rating for any of the town employees, that will be in that person's personnel record. Absolutely. Okay.
I just would like to say that I hope going forward that we come up with a, we had, and I'm not saying it was perfect, but we had the same evaluation for the first 14 years. We've had a different form the last 3. And last year we had 0 input from 6 of the counselors. This year we had input, but I don't know how a motion for a rating, to me, it should be a cumulative score. It shouldn't be a motion, because I could, somebody could amend the motion and say, oh, I think it should be a 5, or I think it should be a 2. So there's no real basis, it doesn't seem, for the motion on a, I don't understand how there's a motion for a number, and it's not just, numbers are numbers and you just add them up and divide. But I do thank the committee for their hard work. I just don't agree with the process.
Okay, this process has been here for the past couple of years. It seems to be working. The committee is a hard-working committee, and we're just really voting to adopt their report. It's not that we're voting so much on the numbers, unless someone wanted to amend their report, but it's a vote to accept the report of the committee. So I will entertain a motion to accept the report of the committee, and it was a coming out of committee, and it was a 2-to-1 vote, so it does not need a second. All those in favor of accepting the report of the appointments committee, please signify by saying aye when your name is called.
Council Ruggiero,
Yes.
Council Flockhart,
Yes.
Council DeMarco,
Yes.
Council Lettieri,
No.
Council Honan,
Yes.
Council Conti, Council Farino,
No.
Vice President Christopher,
Yes.
President Boncory.
Yes. Motion passes. The report is accepted. Under new business, old business, we have the proposed trash fee. Council Terry, I believe, has put forward to us that will have to go over to our next meeting, and it will stay on under old business until we get all the information that the Finance Committee needs to come forward with it. All right. Hearing any other new business? Does anybody have any new business? Any councils have any motions they want to bring forward? Hearing none, we'll move on. Back to public comment. We're back at public comment. Again, the number is 1-301-715-8592 with an ID number of 844-967-40096#. Is there anybody? I see at least one hand up. I think
Yep,
Karen
we have
Chavez.
Karen Travis.
Hi, Karen.
Good evening.
How are you?
Good. This is just my disappointment in the evaluation process that was done by the subcommittee on appointments, commissions, and committees. It was done on March 26, 2021. Councilors DeMarco, Flockhart, and Ruggiero. The 3 councilors evaluated the town manager on only the 8 goals that he had. Nothing was done on his communication with the citizens of Winthrop or even you, the council. He does not fully understand Winthrop. He's had 2.5 years to do so and has not. It was stated on March 26, 2021, that he led us through the pandemic of the last 12 months. He was only able to accomplish that because of Chief Flanagan in the Winthrop Fire Department, Chief Delahanty in the Winthrop Police Department, Steve Calla and all the DPW workers, including DPW, Water, Sewer, and Cemetery, the Property Maintenance Department, Meredith Hurley with all her expertise 24/7, the EOC, all department heads, Parks and Rec, COA veterans agents who manned the food bank at the Arthur T. Cummings and delivery to those in need. The town clerk's office, who ran 4 very important elections, 2 of them with early in-person voting and all 4 with mail-in. The medical reserves, who helped as soon as they were called on. Inspectional services who went out into the community to explore and enforce all rules and regulations from the governor's office as restrictions were lifted. Lastly, Lisa Howard, superintendent of schools, and her administrative staff, who continued to educate our kids remotely, hybrid, and now fully in person. Maybe don't agree at 100%, but they got 100% better than some other kids in the United States. 6 counselors voted a 1-year extension for the town manager. 3 counselors voted no, and I don't understand it. No more laurel wreaths for the town manager. He does not walk on water. I do apologize if I forgot any departments. It was not intentional.
Okay, thank you very much, Karen. But you see, town manager did manage all of those department heads and all the work that they did do. And I want to thank him for getting us through the pandemic. Let's move forward. Any other public comment?
There are no other hands.
All right, moving on. Any public relations? Does anybody have any public relations or notices? We will be having a meeting Thursday, and that meeting is a very important meeting. It's a meeting on joint meeting between the planning board and the town council to determine the zoning for the middle school project. There are a few people that are very interested in doing projects in that area on 151 and 141 Pauline Street. And it's important that we zone it. It's been too many years where it has not been done, and we've just been losing too much money on that area. This meeting coming up Thursday, I hope will be informative. I hope we will have a lot of input from the town, because this is probably going to be the last actual meeting on this issue before we are going to be able to put out some RFPs and get something going and developing in that property. So please join with us for the joint meeting on the 22nd, which is Thursday evening at 7 p.m. There are openings on committees we still have openings on the Airport Hazards Committee, the Board of Appeals, the Planning Board, and TSAC. And this meeting is now going to be in recess, I suppose, if someone would make that motion until 7 p.m.
To make a motion to suspend until the spring forum at 7 p.m.
Second.
I think it's a motion to adjourn this meeting. Spring forums are totally separate.
We can. I think last time
to adjourn.
I think we kept it open at the fall forum, and it became part of the minutes of the meeting. But we can adjourn if the motion is to adjourn. We can reopen it, not as a council meeting, and just have a spring forum at 7 p.m. So is your pleasure to adjourn this meeting or to recess it?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Been made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye when your name is called.
Counselor Giro,
Yes.
Counselor Flockhart,
Yes.
Counselor DeMarco,
Yes.
Counselor Terry,
Yes.
Counselor Honan,
Yes.
Counselor Conti, Counselor Freno,
Yes.
Vice President Christopher,
Yes.
President Boncory.
Yes, okay, this meeting will be adjourned, but please keep it open because at 7 o'clock, we're gonna be on the same number and the same everything. So the meeting is now adjourned, but please, if you're listening and you're on, stay on this station because we will be coming back at 7 o'clock. Thank you. Thank you, and welcome back everyone to a meeting of the Winthrop Town Council. Although it's not a meeting, the meeting has been adjourned. We adjourned the meeting and put it over till 7 o'clock so that we could have the spring forum. You are now coming in to join us for the spring forum, and I want to welcome you back. I see that we have more people that have attended. 32 people have joined us, which is a very good number. And I'm glad to see that. I'm going to turn the meeting over to our town manager, Austin Faison, to present the spring forum.
Good evening, everyone. This is Austin Faison, the town manager. Still reeling a little bit from that last public comment, but I'll reserve my response to that. Put this video together for the budget presentation, similar to the last year. Gave me a little bit more time to add some polish to it. After the video presentation concerning the budget, which goes through the executive summary of it, Anna Friedman will then run us through the particulars of the financial items of the budget. And then after that, I will have a few slides concerning the spring forum and some of the programs that are going to be in place for the summer. So with that, Larissa, if you could cue up the video, we'll go from there. Thank you. Good evening, Winthrop. This is Austin Faison, your town manager, and welcome to my fiscal year 2022 budget presentation. What I'm going to do with this presentation is walk you and the rest of the community through our next financial plan and what our policies and initiatives are going to be over the next fiscal year. The theme of this budget this year is a transition to wellness. And the reason why it's a transition to wellness is because this has been a pretty crummy year. And we have to work hard to get back to a sense of normalcy. This is not something that we're going to flip some type of switch and move back to where we once were. So we are very excited to work through the coming year to provide services to the community that we think will help preserve the public health, improve the fiscal health of the municipal government, and also continue the path of progress of the modernization of delivery of municipal services. So with that, let's get into it. In this fiscal year, we're going to stick with the same type of goals and metrics that we did last year. The reason why? It's because we couldn't get as much done last year that we would have liked to. We got a lot done, but we were very, very focused on this thing called COVID-19. And when I say we were focused on it, I mean we were essentially solely focused on it. My senior staff and I had daily calls concerning COVID-19, reiterating numbers, issues within the community, and how we could best help our most vulnerable populations. That was something that happened on March 16th of 2020, and it has essentially continued to this day. We've ramped down the calls a little bit. We don't have to have the food bank all of the time, and we don't necessarily have to check in on our seniors every day, but the pandemic is still here. And we've been working under these conditions for a very long time. And the reason why I say working is because the staff of the town across the board has been working incredibly hard over the past year. And I believe the entire community owes a debt of gratitude to all of our municipal employees. We have continued to provide the services that you rely on, whether it's educating your children, making sure the roads are clean during snowstorms, maintaining our beaches and our parks, and all of the other municipal services that have been provided over time. I will concede that we have had to make hard choices during the past year. Closing the library was not something that was desirable to me. It was something that was necessary to keep the community safe. I'm excited that we are going to be opening the library on a limited basis in the near future when our new library director comes on board in late April of 2021. It's exciting. We're going to forge a new path forward with the library, and we're excited to provide services again. Another community service that had to be ramped down during the pandemic was the senior center, named after our former Speaker of the House and Representative, Robert DeLeo, who, again, and I will reiterate, this entire community owes a huge debt of gratitude, because one person helped balance the budget for years in this town, and that was Speaker DeLeo. He has since resigned to go on to greener pastures and working at Northeastern, where I actually went for grad school, so I'm actually happy that he is continuing to work on something that's very important to me. But the community will be at a loss without having the representative in the State House for us. That said, we're excited to see the good work that newly elected Representative Turco will be providing to the community, and we're excited for the effort that he will put in advocating for this community and for a small part of Revere as well. Back to the transition to wellness, there's a few different things we're going to be doing with that, and that's the main focus of this budget. There are 4 overarching goals that help form the creation of the budget document. Those are conservative and realistic revenue projections to ensure current free cash levels and to maintain the town's bond rating, to work in conjunction with the school department and school committee, and to continue our aggressive pension funding schedule. These will be and will continue to be the guiding ideals of the creation of the budget document during my time in Winthrop. These are very important to me, and the majority of the advice that I give to the council when I help to inform and facilitate their decision-making has been under the guise of these 4 overarching goals. For fiscal 22, we are focused on an additional set of goals that all departmental goals wind up into. And these goals were created by my office along with the town council for the fiscal 21 budget, and they will continue for the fiscal 22 budget. Those goals are to professionalize town services, to leverage technology and maximize service delivery, to elevate community and economic opportunity, to prioritize health, safety, and overall community well-being, and to ensure quality, operational, and financial management. Again, these goals remain the same this year because we made progress on all of them in fiscal 21, but we would like to continue to make progress on different facets of them in fiscal 22. One exciting thing of note about fiscal 21 was the completion of the WIN 2030 project with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. MAPC came in May of 2020 to start the community process of the WIN 2030 project. And what that is a long-term strategic visioning document. There are hundreds of surveys completed entailing a plethora of information across the town that is available both on the town and MAPC website. And that document both talks about what is important to the community and how the community sees itself and where the community sees itself going. And it also gives a nice baseline for a future master planning document. There is an item in the capital plan for a master planning document, but we do not have the funding for that project yet. And that would be to the tune of between $200,000 and $250,000. It's a big project. It will take years. The new planning director, Rachel Kelly, is up to the task. We look forward to the master plan overhauling the zoning within town to bring clarity and modernization so that residents, property owners, and potential developers can know what they can do in town. This is also very important because I want Winthrop to be able to be in the driver's seat with any development that happens in town. I want you all in this community to be able to make the decisions of what can happen. And with the zoning that's written right now, it's a little difficult to maintain a vision that Winthrop has for itself and how Winthrop sees itself. So it's important to codify these types of thoughts in the zoning associated with it so that people can be prosperous in Winthrop in the future. The biggest factor that has impacted this budget in the short term is COVID-19. It impacted the closing of the fiscal 20 budget. It impacted the entire fiscal 21 budget, and it will impact the fiscal 22 budget.
Now, this isn't just in the delivery of services and things like that. It hits our revenue when our restaurants are closed and our hotels are closed because of state regulations. We are unable to capture the revenue that would come from those taxes associated with those services. Although we are a community that is dependent on property tax, we still have other sources of revenue, and they were impacted during this pandemic because of the necessity of placing health as the highest priority. One thing that I would like to note as well is that the public health director and the Board of Health did a tremendous job in dynamically reacting to the pandemic and the changes in regulations by both the state and federal governments. These were non-political decisions that were based on protecting the health of the community. Although many of these decisions have been talked about in a political nature in different forms of media, and there have been claims that they have been politicized in town, I would like to assure you that that has not been the case. Director Hurley has gone above and beyond in trying to provide the best medical advice to the community as possible, and has spent countless and countless hours on meetings and on the phone with different members of this community, but also representatives from around the state and around the country to figure out how to best react to this dynamic pandemic and also how to keep the community safe. We are very lucky to have Director Hurley on board, and I'm going to be speaking a little bit more about her department a little further into this presentation. The last item of note on terms of the short-term impacts is the American Rescue Plan Act. It's a very exciting act. We are happy that we are going to be receiving money directly from the federal government, but we don't know what we can do with that money yet. So, with that said, there are 3 items of note with this money. The town will receive $5.425 million in federal funds in the form of a grant. The town will receive the funds in 2 tranches, and the town can spend the money until December 31st, 2024. Exciting amount of money, exciting amount of time to utilize that money, but a whole lot of things we could use it on, and we still need the rules on how we can use it. What will be certain, though, is that there are going to be things that we will not be able to use it on. And what we should not be doing is balancing a budget off of it or taking over operating costs that should be budgeted for otherwise through the American Rescue Plan money. So moving on to policies and initiatives. So, professionalization of town services. One of my main goals since I've come to town has been to professionalize town services. I've come from other working environments where the government was a little more set up in terms of its ability to respond to the needs of the community, and there has been different service level agreements that have been provided between the government and the community. I've worked hard to ensure that we're able to provide a higher level of service within Winthrop. In this next year, what we're going to be focused on is the solid waste program, which will be a big item in the spring forum. But what we are doing is we are moving from a system where everyone could put out 3 bins that they wanted to of trash, whatever size, and have them picked up on a weekly basis with little to no restrictions beyond that. We have a recycling program as well, and it's used to some degrees. What we're going to move forward to is something that I mentioned in last year's budget and the budget before that. We're going to be distributing individual toters to each unit of housing, which is a town trash bin. It will be the same size as the recycling bin, and it will have a different top on it to indicate trash rather than recycling. This will be our first attempt to put caps on our solid waste system and to assess some value to the solid waste system. We did not control our tonnage previously. We were not impacted by more or less tonnage. Now we are. The new contract has a base fee that we pay to the company, and then the company passes to us all of the fees that are called disposal fees or tipping fees. So that's the cost of dropping off the materials at a facility. Trash, that's about $115 per ton. Recycling, about $110 per ton. We used to make money on recycling, or our company that we contracted with used to make money. That is no longer the case. So the town needs to be responsible for the costs associated with its waste. One thing that we will control going forward is the tonnage that goes into the system, because that is a financial item going forward. Our average tonnage is 6,500 tons of solid waste per year. It would be great if we reduce that, because if we reduce that in the future and we get things out of the trash, we will not be paying as much in those disposal fees. That is not something we had before. And I understand that it comes at the cost of a solid waste fee being introduced to the community and a little bit more hurt on everyone's wallets. But this is the cost of having a solid waste program that is both professional, it will keep the community clean, and it will also standardize the look around town when trash day happens, so you don't see some bins and some trash bags that are different colors. You will see nice blue bins all around town with trash and recycling in them. We are always looking towards enhancing the communications in town. I know you who is at home probably thinks there's a way that I have not tried to communicate to you. I have tried in different ways with Facebook and Twitter and using the town manager's blog. We have these council meetings. We put things in the newspaper, all different types of ways. We have our website as well. But it always seems like the message doesn't get through to certain people. So we're always striving to figure out how we can push it a little bit further. This past year, what we did is we introduced what are called SUFA signs around town. And those are those e-ink signs that you may have seen in front of Town Hall or down at the landing. And there are a few other places. They're very cool. They help the community keep informed, and it was great for us to push out COVID messaging. Those signs aren't going anywhere, and we're going to keep pushing messaging out like that because we think of them as almost digital message boards around town. Instead of using the cork board in Town Hall to talk about all of our meetings, a good thing that we have now is multiple locations where you can get the same information. And we're going to potentially expand that in the future because they have been very successful. We will continue to invest in additional technologies to help us communicate with the public, whether it be talking with public relations firms on how to get our messaging out, whether it be solutions like SUFA. We will continue to work hard to get the message out to you, because what I do not want to happen is an important meeting where people said, I didn't know about it because I didn't get the information. I want as many of you to be able to participate in these important public processes, because none of these decisions are made by one person. There is no single person in town who makes a decision on behalf of the entire community. You all elect a town council who makes a collective decision together concerning many of these items. It is important that as many of you are as informed as possible in your selection of a town councilor, but then also in how you are able to communicate with them so they can advocate on your behalf. We want as much as possible for people to be participating in these programs. One of the best things that has happened in the last year was the introduction of our video conferencing software with Zoom, so that more people in the community were able to interact in the meetings. It was great. I know the town council president has loved the effort so far, and that is not something that will go away in the future. We will continue to budget for video conferencing software for the majority of our meetings, whether they are in person or remotely, so that we can have increased participation in these meetings. Because in the effort of transparency and in the effort of having a large amount of communication in the community, we want as many people as participating as possible, because we do not want people to think that decisions are made behind closed doors or they did not have the ability to participate in the process. Leveraging technology and modern service delivery. Two of my big things. I love tech, and I love figuring out new and novel ways to provide the services that are important to the community. One of those items that we're going to be focused on in the next year is ClearGov. And ClearGov is how we are changing our budgeting platform. We had been using OpenGov for a few years, and we had difficulty integrating it with our financial management platform. So now we're going to be using ClearGov for our web-based budget because we want, again, it to be a little bit easier for you to understand this budget. One of the best things that you can do on the ClearGov website is put in what your current tax bill is and understand what you are paying for with that tax bill. It's a pretty cool tool. I'm excited for more people in the community to be able to use it. With the modernization of service delivery, that's what I'm looking for every day. I'm always looking for ways to make it easier for my employees to do their jobs so that they can potentially do different work or they can do additional work. One of the items that is of note is we rolled out new computers this year. We've added additional web-based applications, and we are trying as hard as possible to keep people safe. The pandemic has limited the ability for us to have in-person service delivery, so we have had to modernize the services that we provide to the community. We've done that in many, many ways. Unfortunately, some of you have come to Town Hall and seen that it's closed, but then you had an opportunity to do the business in a different way. And I understand that Town Hall has been closed to the public, and I know how that's hard, but we are trying to give people options to be able to pay for bills or have services provided to their residents and still keep them healthy and safe. A priority of mine has always been the modernization of service delivery. I continuously will pursue modern solutions and best practices so that we can provide services to the community. I don't want people using typewriters anymore, and I don't want people handwriting permits. I want these things to be done in a modern way. You wouldn't accept this from a business that you do business with, and that's why I'm trying to treat Winthrop like a business sometimes and bring it up to modern service delivery, because there should not be a unique way that we are doing anything in town. We are a municipality within the state of Massachusetts. There are 350 other ones, and we do not all need to invent different ways to make dog license applications. We can have standard practices, we can copy one another, but one thing I will not try to do is preserve the specific ways things were done in the past. If there's a better way to do it and there's an easier way to do it, we will continue to pursue those types of solutions. Many of you out there who have children in the school system may have been impacted in the past fiscal year by the DDoS attack that happened to the town and school IT infrastructure. Unfortunately, we were unable to decipher that problem for a couple of weeks, and now we have a solution in place. But what it did was taught us a very important lesson, that we need to invest additional money into our IT infrastructure and also invest in our managed service delivery. So with that, the town has transitioned to a new managed service provider for our network security. And what they have done already is they have done a network assessment. They have already switched over our firewall. They're in the process of switching over our what are called network switches, and they're going to be managing our Office 365 licenses as well. We are shifting away from having servers in the town that we manage to paying managed service providers to manage our information. The reason why that's very important is that it moves the liability away from the town. I do not want us to be responsible for the maintenance of our IT. We haven't been able to afford it in the past, and instead of putting short money at it, I'd rather find a solution with a company that is committed to keeping Winthrop safe and having reliable internet. I do not want what happened in January and February to happen again to the town or the school. So we were working very hard to ensure that does not happen again. The third goal is to elevate community and economic opportunity. The biggest thing we did with that was add a new planning director. Rachel Kelly is the director of planning and development for the town. She came on in February and she hit the ground running. She has been working with the planning board and the joint subcommittee of the town council on the middle school site. Language is being developed within the planning board concerning recommendations that will go back to the town council concerning the zoning of the middle school site. I am excited to see progress on this important project. I have been talked to in public about this. I've been talked to about meetings in this. The middle school even came up in my interview when I first interviewed in town. That site should not be continue to be vacant, and it needs something. And again, I will say I am agnostic to what goes there, but what I would like to see is something there that benefits the community. The planning board is working on the zoning so that we will be able to put out an RFP, which is a request for proposal, and receive bids from interested developers on what they could do with that site within the zoning that is voted on by the town council. What's exciting about that is that we know developers want this piece of property, and we can control this to a point. But we need to do that within the zoning. And we also need to have a good understanding of what the community wants on that site. So again, these are not decisions that will be made by one person. I and Rachel will not be deciding what happens at the middle school site. We will be helping people within the community make that decision so that, again, the community will continue to make decisions for itself, which is really, it's your money, it's your building. I want you all to know that you have a say in what happens with that in the future. Beyond that, Rachel's been working on a bunch of different things. She's been working with the North Suffolk Regional Sustainability Office, which is the effort that myself and the mayor of Revere and the city manager of Chelsea have worked on with the MAPC and secured money from the Bar Foundation for. This is an exciting regional office that is focused on climate and energy matters. One note of something that's exciting that I know Rachel is already looking into is trying to do a wayfinding study around town. There's a ton of signs in town. There's signs for the Center Business District, for the ferry, MWRA, all these different signs. And they're all inconsistent. Some of them are rusted, some of them look old. We need to clean that up. So what we're gonna do is do a sign audit, and then we're gonna work on wayfinding so that when people come to this community, they can know where to go. The SUFA signs on the back actually have maps on them, and they point people in different directions of where exciting things are in town. We're gonna kind of use that branding and those coloring schemes on this new wayfinding effort. Rachel's hard at work securing funding for this, and we're excited to see where this goes in the future because we want Winthrop to continue to be a beautiful place, but when visitors come, we want to be able to direct them in the right place with some nice signage and help people just find their way around. Now, one of the biggest items of this year is the continued prioritization of health, safety, and overall community well-being. A pandemic can really make you focus on something like this. And I hope we all pause to realize how much we've all been impacted by this pandemic. Winthrop had the first person pass away in Massachusetts from this. We still are having cases happen. We've had many members of our community die and get sick from it. And although the vaccine numbers are very encouraging, we have more than 50% of the population that's over the age of 18 vaccinated to date. That's great news. But again, that's 50% of the population that's not vaccinated. And we have variants that are in town in the Boston region, like the UK variant, which are more aggressive and they can make people very sick. We need to continue to take this very seriously. And I know that there is clamoring for things like in-person meetings and getting things back to normal, and there's pride in the schools going back in person. But all of that comes with a risk still, because we're not past this. People are still getting sick. I get reports from Meredith Hurley on almost a daily basis concerning the numbers. And we're still getting people sick from this. And it's scary because some of those people may get very sick. And we want as much as possible to keep as many people in this community as healthy as possible. So we do still need to follow the restrictions that the state puts in place and still follow the recommendations of the CDC. It is important that we prioritize the health of the community. We all have individual interests. I know. I want to go to a Celtics game again. I would love to have some of my friends come over to my house and do what we used to do. And hopefully we can do that soon. But we still need to get to the other side of that. And there are requirements that come with that. There cannot just be a complete shift back to the way that it was before and an expectation that nothing will have changed in this time. Unfortunately, we have learned a lot of lessons from this, and we have to be cognizant of those lessons going forward, or unfortunately, we'll make the same mistakes again. So what we're going to do this year is we're looking to reorganize some departments. We're looking at something that is going to be called the Health and Human Services Department. And the model of that is providing services in a hub and spoke fashion. So there's a hub where you will interact with, and that will be kind of like the health department before. People call Meredith about everything during the pandemic. But what we can't have Meredith totally consumed with is the delivery of services herself. She needs to be able to delegate to those that are most appropriate to be able to serve members of our community. So the first effort that we're going to have with this is we're going to move Veterans Affairs and the Council on Aging into this Health and Human Services Department. And we're going to have some of the administrative staff support all of the department or all of the divisions of the department instead of individual ones. This is exciting to me because I see what Ro does as the veterans agent and how hard she works. And she needs some admin support sometimes. And this is the first time I've ever been able to offer that to her. And Kathy in the senior center, she's willing to help us and offer some of the budget that was once allocated to her to be able to support an admin person who will support all of these departments. There will be impacts to the senior center, and there could be potential programming that is lost due to this shift. However, the health is the priority. And if there are additional questions, when Kathy Dixon presents her budget to the Finance Committee, she will be more than happy to answer questions or detail to you exactly what services she's not able to provide because of these decisions. I'm excited for this amount of responsibility to be passed along to Director Hurley. She's done a tremendous job during this pandemic, and she has been the clearinghouse of almost all information that has impacted our decision-making in town. She's had to make decisions about things like basketball courts and the yacht clubs and what our survey should look like when when employees come into town hall. I've had to ask her about people who quarantine, everything. It's really crazy how much Meredith has been asked to do in the past year as a health director in a department by herself with some temporary staff. Because of all of this hard work, we've seen the potential in Meredith, and I'm excited to propose that she be made the director of the Department of Health and Human Services. I think she would be excited about the opportunity, and I think that she's a natural fit to help oversee services that aren't just focused on health, but keeping the community as well as possible and taking care of our vulnerable populations. The seniors in our community, as well as our veterans, are very important to ensure their health and their safety. Additional programming that can come through this office will be things like our interaction with CASA and our substance abuse programs that are going through working with the police department and the CLEAR program, different things like that. But it's very exciting because Meredith has done a tremendous job. I'm excited to propose the expansion of her department and her authority, and I look forward to see what she does in the job. The last overarching goal is to ensure quality, operational, and financial management. So first off with that, in terms of operational management, We will be looking to restore some traditional services and the way that we deliver them. I know the community wants that. I know people want to have in-person meetings. I know people want to buy their dog license in person. I know some people just want to come into town hall or the library and kind of hang out. I get that desire. I also hope that you can appreciate my desire to keep my staff safe and keep you safe in terms of your interactions with other people. So we will be going back. It will start with appointments. It will return to a sense of normalcy at some time. But I hope that these new tools and these modern service delivery platforms that we've provided will not be lost. You don't need to come to town hall to do business. We want you to be able to do business on the weekends and things like that. If you work all day and you come home at night and town hall is closed, you can still do the business. We want people to be able to do the business however they see fit. So we will go back to providing these services, but again, I don't want it to be lost that during this pandemic, we were able to provide services the entire time because we came up with new and novel ways to do it, and we will continue to in the future. Last year, CFO and Assistant Town Manager Anna Friedman presented some information on a study that the Division of Local Services of the Department of Revenue provided for the town. It's in the appendix of this budget, but it's a set of policies that we believe, in conjunction with the Division of Local Services, would best suit the town going forward in the creation of the budget document. Instead of year to year deciding how much money goes into this fund or that fund, we would like it to be kind of set in stone and have you all have a set of rules so that it flows downhill. It's a very easy set of policies to follow. I believe that Director Friedman even has updated recommendations for this year based off of her experiences. But it's a great tool to have so that we can continue to fund things correctly and we have certainty in how the money that we are to receive at different times moves through our system. In terms of the capital plan, there is a capital plan in this budget. It's a 5-year plan. What you will see is we started putting additional items into the out years. And when I say out years, those are items that we have identified that are very important to the community that we don't have a funding source for. We know that they're important, but we don't know how to pay for them. That's things like the master plan and things like the public safety building. We know that these things are necessary. We just don't know how we're going to pay for them. And these are the hard discussions that a community needs to have. And that gets me to one of my last points. There needs to be a real discussion within the community of what the priorities of the community are. What are you willing to accept in terms of services, and what concessions are you willing to make? Because concessions are what we have continuously asked my staff and myself to make in my time in Winthrop. I have less staff now than I did when I came to town in 2018. Although many focus on the planning department and the creation of the planning department as an addition, we also dropped the assistant town manager role when David Rodriguez left town. I have tried to present ways to keep the budget, to make my budget decisions revenue neutral and try to help the community as much as possible on the priorities of the community. But I feel like I may be coming to the limits of my flexibility within the budget. We've had to make, over the past year, more hard decisions than I would have liked to in terms of money. And that is without even taking COVID into account. I need the community to understand that the town needs to figure out how to pay for the services that it wants. Moving on to a few personnel changes that have happened in the past year. We've had retirements of Larry Powers, which I know I'm beating you by about 10 days, Larry, but by the time this is posted on the internet, you will most likely have been retired. Diane Wallace left our library department as the director, and Tanji Safuni left the town as the project manager. I mentioned previously, we were excited to have Rachel Kelly join us as the Director of Planning and Development. And we also had Robert Powers, or I call him Robbie, come on as the Assistant CFO. Last person of note that I'll mention is the Assistant Town Manager and Chief Financial Officer, Anna Friedman. When this gets posted, it's going to be the last week that she works for the town. And that's unfortunate. Anna has done a tremendous amount of work for the town. She has created these 3 budgets under very difficult circumstances that I have given her, and she has been nothing but a consummate professional. I hope everyone would join me in wishing Anna all the future success that is clearly in front of her, and help me in thanking her for the work that she did for the community. In closing, it's been a hard year. I know it's been hard for me personally, at work. I think it's been hard for everyone. But what I'm looking forward to is what we can do with this budget and what we're going to do in the future. There are good things coming to Winthrop. The Center Business District is going to be finished at the end of this year. We're going to do that great looking surface work. Some buildings are coming in. Hopefully something happens with the middle school site. I have my fingers crossed that that RFP goes out during the year 2021, and we're able to bring on a developer that's going to do some exciting things there. We also have a reorganized department that I think is going to provide a high level of service to the community. And we're looking forward to getting back to a sense of normalcy. I hope this is a great summer for everyone. I hope that we're able to spend some time outside together. I hope we're able to see people that we haven't seen in person for a while. We're able to break bread and maybe share a beer together. But getting back to that sense of normalcy is going to be good for all of us. I hope that all of us remember, though, again, we're still in this pandemic. So we need all of you to work with us and work with the council and work with the directives that come from our Board of Health or the state or the federal government in ensuring that we keep people as healthy as possible. Because we've done a good job of keeping people healthy, but what we want to do is transition to wellness. That's the theme of this budget again, that we want to transition from this hard time that we've been into the better times that we see ahead. So thank you very much for listening to me. I hope you've enjoyed my budget presentation, and I look forward to discussing it with all of you. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, now I'm going to, oh, pardon
Go
me.
ahead, go ahead, Yana.
Oh, I'm going to now share my screen, and I'm going to just go through a few slides to talk about some of the finances in detail. So bear with me 1 second. It's always a little bit of an adventure when I share screen and try to get the presentation going. Give me 1 second. Okay. And let's see if we can get this to. All right, 1 moment. This is where I need to switch my screen. Let's see if I can do that. There we go. Can everybody see that?
Yes, looks good.
Okay, great. Okay. So I'm going to just run through a few slides just to talk about some of the finances in the FY22 budget proposal. So just really quickly, I'm going to talk about the overall budget outlook. I'm going to go through the general fund, the revenues, the budget gap we were looking at this year, and the solutions that we implemented to close that gap, some summary information on expenditures, some quick conversation on the enterprise fund, and a brief overview on the capital plan. And just as I'm getting started, just to let the council, the finance committee and the Citizens Advisory Commission on Finance know that the numbers in this presentation and the numbers in the budget document, which I'm actually going to give a preview of the online budget document at the end of this, those numbers are all the same as what we reviewed last week. So nothing in this has changed from the meeting last Thursday, just so that folks know. So this, a quick overview. So general fund revenue is increasing by 2.15%. But this includes some other resources such as American Rescue Plan Act money, which I'll talk about in a minute, and a one-time rainy day fund transfer. It also doesn't include some revenue that was, it also doesn't include revenue that is budgeted against when we went through the tax recap setting process in the fall. And I can get into that a little bit more if there are questions on that, but this chart right here is just showing the voted on FY21 budget compared to the proposed FY22 budget. It also, if you're looking at the enterprise funds, there's a large increase there. That is due mostly to adding the new proposed trash enterprise fund that the manager briefly spoke about, and implementing a new trash fee. That increases just because that the appropriations for that fund didn't exist previously in the enterprise funds, which is why it looks like it's going up by so much. And on the expenditure side, there's a brief summary there in terms of what the percent changes going into next year. For town departments, it's a little under 2% at 1.77%. The school department is a bit under 3%, 2.92%. Non-departmental is about 1.2%. And again, the enterprise funds that we've noted above is going up at the same rate as revenue. And our non-appropriated accounts are going up 7.97%. These are assessments that the town must pay to the state. So this is just a brief, this is just a pie chart that I think a lot of folks are probably familiar with in terms of where the resources for the town's budget come from. So it's primarily property tax, very property tax reliant. Over 64% of the resources coming into the town are from property taxes. Next biggest chunk of the pie is state aid, over 22%. And then the next sort of big grouping are our local receipts. And the biggest there are our motor vehicle excise and our pilot agreements with Massport, MWRA, et cetera. So some just quick notes on this. The state aid's increasing about $267,000, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Pilot, the biggest increase there is we're still in that new agreement with Massport where we get increases of $150,000 a year, so that's going up for next year. One thing to note, the budget does not rely on the use of any of our free cash, which is basically our budget surplus at the end of the previous fiscal year. We're not relying on any of that to close the budget for this year, but we are, like I said, relying on a rainy day fund transfer and some use of the ARPA money, American Rescue Plan Act money. And we're also relying on some funds from other available funds that the town has, the cemetery sale of lots fund, the cemetery perpetual care fund, and our regional 911 fund. Those are funds where we get annual sums of money deposited there that we've been using to support ongoing expenditures in the budget that align with those types of expenses. So for expenditures at the cemetery department, for the funds that are for the cemetery funds, and for the regional 911 increases that are in our public safety department. So talking about revenues and talking about the biggest revenue, of course, so property taxes. The easiest way to read this is just to go right down the chart here. So if you're comparing the next year with the current year, the increase for 2.5% is around $944,000. So under Prop 2.5, we get the automatic 2.5% increase. Our new growth is increasing. Our new growth, we have a placeholder of 175,000. We don't know what that was going to be yet, so we have to estimate based on our recent experience what that might look like for next year. So for new growth, we used $175,000 going into the current year. We believe it will likely look similar going into next year. That is a slight decrease down from what we've seen this year. That's typical when we do budgets, that you want to make sure that you've budgeted enough, that you don't budget over aggressively with your new growth. One thing to note that's really important in the budget this year is related to debt exclusion. So for all of the school building projects in town and also the Miller Field project, the town has a debt exclusion. And so that is a temporary amount of money above the property tax levy where folks are being taxed to pay just for that debt service related to those projects. And so once debt service for a project has been completed, based off the amortization schedule, the term of those debt service payments, that means that the amount of money that's raised on the taxes goes down commensurately. It's a 1-for-1. That money can only be used for that project. And so we have some debt service rolling off the books next year. So this means this $467,000 which is a net of some things increasing, but a big amount of debt service rolling off will be coming off the books for next year. That doesn't mean that we have savings elsewhere because that debt isn't available, because again, this revenue is only tied exactly to that debt, and we're not going to have that revenue anymore. So at the when you total everything up, the maximum allowable levy is $35,618,199. We have to set aside some of that for abatements. So when we grant abatements, we have to make sure we don't budget against all of that if we are going to be granting abatements. So one thing to note is that the town is right up against this levy limit. We are about as close as you can get, $3,517 in terms of the excess capacity that we have. And the only reason why that's not zero is because of rounding when we set the taxes. The levy ceiling, so if the town were taxing everyone at the rate that the town could based on based on Proposition 2.5, it could be up to $69 million, but we're taxing at 35.6. So the override capacity that the town has is 38.2 million, should the town ever consider an override. Okay, so the next biggest category of revenue is the state aid, and this is just a brief summary chart of the state aid. So this is based off of the governor's budget that was presented in January. We did just get the House budget numbers last week, too late for incorporation in this budget document, but something that will be discussed in the Finance Commission meetings over the next couple months. So as you can see, Chapter 70, this is aid for education, going up only 0.78%. That's only $57,000, little $57,000 in new money for the town. Our reimbursement for our students that go to charter schools is increasing a bit, so that's going up to $30,228. The unrestricted general government aid, that's going up 3.5%. So the current Governor Baker and the legislature have committed for the past, oh my goodness, six years now, I'm losing track of time, that whatever the state brings in their revenue for the next year, they will use that same amount of revenue growth in terms of calculating the local aid for communities. So they're increasing their budget, they're increasing their consensus revenue, which is the taxes that support the state budget, by 3.5%. So the local aid that we're receiving is going up by 3.5%, which is helpful. It's a lot more than we got last year. So that's going up $156,000. And then we get some other revenues for some other programming that we do related to offsets for veterans payments that we make, et cetera. And then for our library, our aid is staying the same as last year. Let's see. So something to note on state aid. So there are assessments that we have to pay that offset some of what we get in state aid. And so this does reduce, it's not just sort of a net new that we get. We also have to, it's reduced a little bit by the costs that sort of have to go out on the other side. So while Chapter 70 is projected to bring in over $57,000, we do have to pay assessments for charter school tuition, and that's increasing by $31,768. And again, some of these numbers are going to toggle a little bit potentially when the House and Senate debate their budgets, but those are the numbers that we had from the governor's budget. So just one thing to note is that the Chapter 70 funding, unfortunately, it's not recognizing the full cost of special education in Winthrop public schools or healthcare costs that are borne by the town. The state's also not fully reimbursing for the special education circuit breaker as well. So these create additional pressures on the town's own resources to afford the growth both in our town and school departments. One category that I definitely want to take a minute to talk about are the town's local receipts. So these are primarily our excise taxes, motor vehicle, meals, rooms, our pilot that we mentioned earlier, and other things like penalties and interest and fees and fines, basically all your other sort of smaller revenues. However, these revenues are very susceptible to economic impacts. And so you can see here in the chart that we were sort of trending along with actuals, looking pretty well. And then this was the end of, this was FY 2020. You can really see, normally this would tick up, each year would tick up a little bit, but COVID hit in the last quarter. And so revenues fell off a bit. And then by the time it came to work on the FY 21 budget, it was clear that our rooms excise, our motor vehicle excise, and other revenues were going to be coming in much less than what they had been in previous years, just due to restrictions. With travel restrictions, very hard to bring in room excise tax, motor vehicle excise. If folks don't have if folks are feeling an economic sort of pinch. If people are being laid off, they're certainly not going to be purchasing new vehicles. So it's definitely bearing out this year, which I think I have on a later slide to show you. And you can really see it here specifically to the excise taxes, that those truly did fall off. And it shows you here, this is a proposal for the FY22 budget. We're not quite back up to where we were. And so what that means is that while our expenditures have been growing at, at normal levels, our revenues have not recovered yet due to COVID-19. And we have to be conservative in our budgeting. A core principle of budgeting is conservative revenue projections. You don't want to overestimate your revenue and realize you've budgeted more than you're going to bring in. That's just fundamental. You should not do that. Additionally, the state oversees municipalities and their tax setting, their tax rate setting. And when we go to set the town's tax rate, we need to demonstrate that we're not budgeting off of revenues that are above what we're bringing in for the current fiscal year. I don't know yet whether they're going to have some level of flexibility on that in light of the fact that we've had such a strange year and a half. But in light of that, going into next year, you'll notice that we have not, for our local receipts, we have not fully recovered yet in terms of budgeting for those for next year. So just really quick note that property tax revenue is limited by Proposition 2.5, and other revenue sources such as local receipts have been impacted by COVID-19. So that's creating the compression on the budget that we're seeing now. One other thing I wanted to quickly note, this is from a slide that I presented at the Fall Forum in November. And so this was projections prior to COVID. And so this was a model assuming some inputs before COVID ever hit. And so that gap that you're seeing there does not include any implications for revenues falling off. So this included tax revenue going up 2.5% under Prop 2.5, local aid at around 2.6% based on some recent averages, local receipts just incrementally increasing at 1.5%. But then you can see that if you think about normal inflationary costs, if you think about 3% across expenditure lines, which is the red line, you can see that we have a structural budget deficit even prior to COVID-19. So you add in COVID-19 and this gap just gets worse. And so as we march along, it's getting harder and harder and harder to close this gap, because at the end of the day, our revenue and expense line must be on the same line because we have to have a balanced budget. So talking about that gap, so the town and the school had over $2.5 million worth of funding requests when compared to the FY 2021 budget. So at the end of the day, this meant we had a budget gap of around $1.4 million that we had to close. So how did we get there? So we cut from department requests over $631,000. We made cuts from the last year's budget, $243,000. We're proposing a transfer from the rainy day fund to basically address the non-COVID budget gap of $130,000. And then we're proposing to use some American Rescue Plan funds to offset COVID-19 specific revenue loss. And so those are our solutions to closing the budget gap. So a quick note on the American Rescue Plan Act that the manager talked about as well. So this little blurb here is directly from the bill, and it says that the funds may be used for the provision of government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue of such local government due to the COVID-19 public health emergency relative to revenues collected in the most recent full fiscal year prior to the emergency. So that's all it says. So based on that, don't look at all of these numbers because it's a lot to absorb really quickly on a slide. But based on that, we did an analysis of saying, okay, the most recent full fiscal year prior to the emergency, that's FY19. And we don't have guidance yet specifically if this is only going to be relevant for certain revenue source codes, or revenue categories, I should say. So we don't know if the federal government might say, you know what, when we say that, we really just mean your excise taxes, or we really just mean property taxes. We don't know yet if they are going to put additional conditions on that or provide additional guidance, but we have attempted to make a calculation of what we think would appear to be appropriate based on that very general language to try to address that gap that I showed you all in the local receipts. And so what we did was we calculated we looked at the year prior to the emergency, we looked at last year, and you can really see if you look at the 4.2 million In 19, we were down to 3.8 million in 20, and the 21 budget projected even lower than that. And the 21 projected, this is where we are, this is using revenue as of March. We are not even projecting to meet our budget. That has improved a little bit over the month of April. And so what we're proposing to do is to utilize $450,000 pending further guidance from the U.S. Treasury and the state. This may need to get revised as we work through the budget process, but to basically supplant the loss of funding between what we're looking at going into next year versus what we had previously. One caveat I note here is that our in FY19, we sort of had a banner year. We had a couple things come in much higher than normal. So the variance for that year is actually quite high, which is why we're not saying that full variance. And we also don't want to budget up to that because we want to make sure that we still are budgeting conservatively. So let's see. So brief overview on expenses. So this is the same chart as previous that we are, I talked about briefly. But just in general, in terms of how we approached where to allocate increases, the majority of expenditure increases are related to contractual obligations or just right sizing of appropriations to reflect current salaries or other actual. So if we have a line item that every year, you know, they're spending $5,000 out of it, and we validated that that is a contract that makes sense and is appropriate, and we've only been appropriating $1,000, then we adjust that line item to properly reflect the $5,000, so that we're not moving money around at the end of the year trying to clean things up. And so just a quick note on fixed costs. They are increasing at a rate faster than the revenue that we're bringing in. So what are some of the fixed costs? So the town's retirement contribution. We have a funding schedule for our pension system. It goes up 4% a year. And so the increase going to next year that is being allocated to the general fund is around $140,000. Health insurance, an increase of around $227,000. So most of the plans in the Group Insurance Commission, the GIC, of which the town is a member, the rates for those plans increased about 5.5% going into next year. But overall, this increase is only about 3% overall. And so this will be an area that we'll have to closely monitor. Based on sort of where our plan participants are in, I feel okay that we're okay budgeting at that level, but we'll need to keep an eye on it coming out of open enrollment. Just the Medicare costs associated with payroll, our liability insurance. This is a big one that's been a huge focus for the town over the past year and a half. This is for non-health insurance. So our previous insurer had non-renewed us for FY21. We went through an entire procurement process at the end of FY20 with a risk advisor. We were able to retain some coverage with our previous insurer, but it was conditional coverage in terms of us taking specific steps to reduce our loss ratio. They also would not provide coverage for our professional liability lines. So we are receiving coverage from another carrier for our professional liability lines. But we needed to, with this, our deductibles were higher, and the premiums are increasing quite a bit next year in general. And so that line is increasing substantially going into next year. State and county assessments, these were those non-appropriated lines. These are the assessments we pay the state. Vocational tuitions, these are the tuitions that we pay for the two vocational schools, and one of them is seeing an enrollment increase, and so our costs there are going up substantially. And then our non-excluded general fund debt, we have some debt rolling on next year for first big debt payment next year, and that's going up $141,000. So all of those things together, the budget needed to absorb prior to even getting to the point of appropriating new money for the school or town departments such as public safety, public works, the library, et cetera. And so this is just a quick overview of what sort of 30,000-foot view looking down on town and school departments about how much of that general fund pie do they comprise. So school is the biggest part, just in terms of one singular entity at about 41%. The non-departmental makes up the next group, and I will explain what that is in a second. And then public safety and public works are sort of the next biggest components there. So I don't know if you guys can see this very well, but this dark blue is personnel, and this is the past few years. This dark green is personnel. This lighter green is education, of which about 81 to 82% is also personnel. So when you're looking at the budget of the town and the school, most of it are for employees who are performing services for the community. So that if you are going to be looking to restrain costs, you're really looking down here, unless you're talking about making changes to positions. And so I just wanted to help folks visualize that. So in terms of overall appropriation for the school, the FY22 budget proposes $650,000 increase for the school department for a total appropriation of about $22.89 million. That's just under a 3% increase. The school has requested an increase of over $1.2 million, which would be a 5.5% increase. So there's a gap there between what the budget is able to provide right now based on our estimates compared to what the school is looking for next year. And then for town departments, so this is just an overview of just on the town side. This non-departmental, this is the tuitions to the vocational schools. This is shared expenses. So this is a lot of the fixed costs that we just talked about, the non-health insurance, debt service, employee benefits, retirement, that's all in here. And then in terms of the other largest groups, public safety, public works, police and fire are being held to less than a 2% increase for next year. DPW highway is only a little over a 1% increase. The library is less than a 1% increase. We've had to make cuts to departments such as the Council on Aging to not restore a position for next year. The cemetery department and public works also, reductions there have meant that we will not be able to backfill certain positions going into next year. And we are making investments, as the town manager noted, at the public health department and anywhere else where there are some adjustments. Those are, there are a few places where other growth is made to restore a couple cuts that were made in FY21 for positions that needed to be restored or to align budget with actuals, like I just mentioned. So quickly on enterprise funds, all of the enterprise funds except for the water sewer fund are seeing reductions. This is because most of these funds experienced decreases in revenue at the end of FY20 and so far through this year, just as a result of COVID-19. We weren't able to offer exactly the same amount of programming at the recreation fund due to COVID-19. The rink needed to make some closures due to curfews that were put in place. And so we expect the funds to make their budgets this year. However, going into next year, as I mentioned earlier, the DOR does not permit cities and towns to set their taxes, and which includes when we have to submit information on our enterprise funds, because if they don't meet their budgets, the general fund has to pick up that tab. So they don't want to see us budgeting against revenues that are far above what came in the previous fiscal year. And so we needed to adjust our assumptions for our enterprise funds going into next year. I think in all of these cases, these appropriations are actually more consistent with the levels of spending that these funds see. And so this might even end up generating some healthy retained earnings for some of these funds going into next year. And then the water and sewer enterprise fund, looking at an increase of about 2.64% there over the FY21 budget. That's around $272,000. That's primarily related to increases in the MWRA assessment. And so the assessment for next year is about is a little over $2 million for the water assessment, and the assessment for sewer is increasing by about 4% going into next year. Those are preliminary estimates, and so we usually get the final assessments from the MWRA in May, and so we'll have to see if that changes. This is something that we're closely watching, also as part of the water loss audit and the water rate study that is underway and will be completed before the end of the spring, because those are components that contribute to what the overall calculation needs to be for the water sewer rate. And through the water loss audit and the water rate study, we hope to identify if there is some sort of mitigation that the town can do that we aren't already doing to address our water loss ratio. And then if we're able to address that, how does that impact what the water rates need to be? And then having the final updated information on the MWRA assessment so that we can sort out exactly what that budget needs to be for next year to calculate that rate. And then this is just a quick chart on the MWRA assessments. As you can see how those have been ticking up over the past few years. And so that, again, that's sort of generating the most of the increase in the water sewer fund for next year. Capital plan. So we've tried to have the most robust capital plan possible going into next year to include, as the manager noted, items that we don't have a funding solution for yet on the plan, but just to note them on the plan so that as the town moves forward, it can remain on the list and the funding source can be identified, or conversations can be had about removing or changing certain proposals that have been made. So this slide though shows a few things that we have identified resources for. The first thing is to suggest a $128,000 transfer from the Capital Stabilization Fund to support two projects for next year. One is a new pumper for the fire department. They have needed to roll off their old pumper, and we have a proposal that would allow the town to lease purchase this new engine and do it in a way that only requires about a $25,000 contribution from the Capital Stabilization Fund to then finance that, because some lease finance payments that the fire department has roll off at the end of next year, and the first payments for this engine wouldn't occur until FY23. So we think that that might be an ideal situation. The Revere Street project, this has been sort of a long time coming, getting to the 100% design phase, or else we could lose access to the next stage of this project, which would be supported by the state. Additionally, $94,000 in ongoing pilot funding to support two projects that have been supported for the past 3 years, which is the annual replacement of the police cruiser and the annual sidewalk repair supplement. When we first agreed to the new Massport pilot agreement, we attempted to kind of carve off some of that initial money to be a dedicated source for some annual capital programs, and we have maintained that in this budget, just reduced it ever so slightly. And then separately, we are suggesting to transfer $75,000 from our building maintenance fund to support risk mitigation priority maintenance projects at our fire station, our police station, and our schools. So all of these focus on risk mitigation projects. This is an area that our liability insurer has asked the town to please focus on to help reduce our loss ratios. And so all of these things attempt to do that and demonstrate progress to them on that as well. I'm not going to go through all of these in detail, but these are in our capital plan online. But this is just a sampling of some other items where we've identified funding that it does not require a transfer from any of the other the stabilization funds. It is not part of pilot. There are a couple places where we've identified a placeholder for a type of project that we think could be eligible for the American Rescue Plan money once we receive the additional guidance on that. And so those aren't final, but those are just placeholders that we put in to say, here, we would like to, here's a list to get started to identify some priorities for that money. So those are listed as well. And then one quick thing I wanted to mention was a recommendation we have to change free cash policy to better address the town's capital planning. So right now, the town has a fantastic policy that the rating agencies, the bond rating agencies really like, because it dedicates annually from the town's free cash, which is the surplus at the end of the year. It sets aside funding at the beginning of the next fiscal year into the town's various stabilization funds. And so these stabilization funds demonstrate that the town has reserves and can use those reserves to help weather a rainy day or deal with other unexpected situations that arise during the year, which provides for financial stability, which is great. However, the town doesn't really have a dedicated source of funding for all of its capital planning, and that's really important. So one of the things that we wanted to focus on this year was suggesting a change to free cash that would still prioritize funding for the stabilization funds, however, would also then allocate some funding to an annual capital outlay. So there could be a dedicated source for capital that would not require the town to be drawing on those stabilization funds once money has been deposited there. And then also to try to make some progress on our unfunded liability for the town's OPEB, our other post-employment benefits, so that's retiree healthcare. And so the proposal is to slightly change the allocations there, and I'm happy to go into that in more detail with folks if there are questions on that. And oh, I mentioned the maintenance plan already, and I forgot to delete that one. So next steps, just really on this, there will be public meetings in May with the Finance Commission and department heads. We assume we'll be attending those at the discretion of the Finance Commission, and the Finance Commission will present a financial plan to the Town Council based on their review of the manager's budget, and then the Council will review that and approve a final budget in June. June 15th is the deadline there. So I'm going to show everyone a preview of the online budget that we're launching in 1 second. So just some other information about where you can get some more information if you would like. The online budget, which I will show you, limited physical copies can be requested from the manager's office. And then when the Finance Commission publishes their plan, we'll make sure that's available on the website. And we will be happy to make copies available of that as well if folks would like those. I'm happy to take questions, but before I do, I'm hoping just to pull up the site. Give me 1 second, please. Too many things open on my screen. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again here. Okay, can folks see this up on their screen?
Yeah.
It's blacked out, Anna.
Oh,
It's blacked out.
It's, well, on mine it says started.
no, it's up.
It's good here. It was good.
I saw it, Anna.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm going to share screen again.
Sorry, Anna.
No, that's okay. So,
Just got to move it up.
tomorrow. Oh, yep. Maybe I can make this a little bit bigger. I don't know if that made it better or worse for people, but so starting tomorrow, apologies that it's not up tonight. We had a technical issue earlier that is being fixed right now and overnight. This will be published online, and if you go to the town's website, town.winthrop.ma.us, there will be a link there for the budget that will take you to our new online version of the budget, which we think will be a lot more easy for folks to navigate that don't want to have to scroll through a giant 300-page PDF. So when you go to this document, if you just hover over any of these headings up here, you can look and see, you can browse through anything that you're interested in. So if you say, you know what, I don't really know what this budget is all about, you can go to the Citizen's Guide to the Budget, and there are definitions in there for you. It explains the process. If you want to know something about, the general fund, you can click on the general fund page. And something that it will bring up some charts and graphs for you. Actually, that's not the best one, but if you want to go to departments, so say I want to know what's going on in the fire department for next year. So if you scroll down to the fire department, which I just missed, here it is. It will give you their mission statement, their description, summary of all the expenses. These are all the changes for next year. It will give you sort of just the bottom line. It will show you the positions. It will show you the types, and if you hover over, you can sort of pull out the different types. You can also change the way the information is displayed. So I'm a visual learner myself, so I love the idea of being able to toggle information so I can think about it some more. Same thing down here. This will tell you the different types of expenses. You can toggle that if you want to get a sense over time how that looks. And it's showing you actual budget and budget. And then there are the budget charts. And the reason why it's taking so long is because the numbers for 22 got loaded in a wrong column. They should be down here, but they're up here. So it will show you all the numbers for the individual line items. It will show you the organizational chart and some goals and metrics. So we're really excited about this. And if you scroll over, there's additional, the capital plan. It will give you details on the capital plan that we just went through in the meeting, and it will also show you project details. We tried to include a lot more project highlights this year. So there are descriptions for most all of the projects, and some of them even have photos associated with them so that you can see what that project is all about. So there's descriptions in there. And then there's an appendix at the end, which has the school budget, the school's budget, and it has the financial policies and procedures. If you would like a copy of any of these, and you have an email address, you can select that you just want one page because you want to print it out and make notes on it. If you want to make notes on the fire department page, you just have to plug in your email address, check that box, and it will download a PDF for you, and you can print it out at home. If you want a whole version of this, it's going to be very long, but you can hit select all and print that as well. But I just hope you have a lot of paper because it's quite long. So we're happy about that as well, that it gives folks an option to print at home on their end. And I think that's most of what I wanted to show all of you on the new version of the budget book. That's all I have. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Austin, are you done with your presentation as well? Ready for questions?
We can do questions about the budget. I have the spring forum slides. It's only 13 slides, so that's a quick presentation. So whatever you see fit.
Yeah, I think you should finish and then I will open it up for questions. Entire thing.
All right. Yep. Give me 1 second to pull this up. All right. All right, and trying to move this along, I'll just do it this way. This is the spring forum for 2021. The focus on this is on 4 specific items: the solid waste program, the middle school site, the center business district project update, and a few departmental updates. I will note that this is focused on the coming summer and what we have to look forward to. The budget is kind of like an overarching document that covers all the finances and priorities of the entire fiscal year. The focus of this presentation is on some of the items that are more prescient and coming up in the near term. So with the solid waste program, there's a nice example of how the bins are most likely going to look, with municipal blue with the Winthrop logo on the side, trash only stamped on the top, and also a blue top, unlike the recycling bins that have yellow tops on them. Just to note, 2 years ago at this time, this was a slide that I presented to the town. To establish a manners committee of dedicated individuals that meet on a regular basis to discuss solid waste related issues faced by Winthrop residents, businesses, and schools. That's the Winthrop Zero Waste Committee. Wendy Millar Page was just participating in the subcommittee meeting of finance concerning some of the items. This group has been hard at work for more than a year now. Next up is a mission to try to reduce the solid waste in town for up to 70% by 2030, which hopefully comes to fruition. Beyond that, this will be achieved through a diversification of the town's efforts to remove all forms of solid waste. And I noted that the contract was increasing in price. Where do we find ourselves right now? The contract with Capital Waste was extended for 5 years. That happened in the previous town council meeting 2 weeks ago. With the certification of the minutes from tonight's meeting, I'm able to sign off onto that 5-year extension of the contract. There will be new payment terms that are being discussed within the finance committee and will ultimately be voted on by the town council because of the increased fees associated with the trash contract, because the town is not responsible for the disposal. Again, the Zero Waste Committee made recommendations last year, and they're still working hard on some of the items concerning the rollout of a new solid waste program. And again, the fee is being debated. So what's coming next? Solid waste ordinances are being reviewed by the Zero Waste Committee, and recommendations will be presented to the Board of Health. The Board of Health is the entity in town which has oversight over the ordinances concerning solid waste, because solid waste and sanitation falls under public health. These bins have been ordered and will be distributed to the community with some overflow bag solution with them, a few of them, so everyone kind of can ease into this process. Those bins have been ordered. Hopefully they are delivered early in the summer. The Waste Zero Committee and the town will be participating in education and informational campaigns before the program is completely rolled out, so that people aren't surprised by the new program, but also to remind them what goes into recycling, what contaminated recycling looks like, and give them some of the options concerning textile recycling and composting with Black Earth that they could get in touch with to, again, reduce what's going into the trash bin. Once those bins are distributed, we're going to start enforcing the ordinances that will be on the books. One of the biggest things with this is the entire community trying to live within the ordinances as they are codified when they're updated, and enforcement of what's in a trash bin versus what's in a recycling bin will become important because, again, whatever we reduce from the trash bins is the highest cost item in the contract. Whatever we can do to reduce those 6,500 tons of waste that we are putting into landfills or incinerators is helpful to ultimately the pocketbooks of the individuals within town. If you have more trash than can fit in the bin, you can use an overflow bag. The Waste Zero Committee, or the Zero Waste Committee, excuse me, is working on that. They will most likely go with a company called Waste Zero to handle the distribution and sale of overflow bags so that local businesses will be able to offer them to people. But the town doesn't necessarily want to get into the small business of selling bags and all the handling cash policies that would come with it. This fee, if it's enacted by the town council, would begin in fiscal 22. It would be on some distributed bills at some point. Q1 water bills is a time period it could be. It won't be before that, but Councilor Lettieri brought up earlier tonight his experiences in speaking with Ashland, and they do a one-time fee. So it has not been determined when the fee will be felt by the community, if there is a fee. Lastly, we're going to see how the program works and then adjust accordingly, because this is a new program and there's going to have to be changes. So as much as we would like it to be perfect from the start, we're going to kind of ease our way into it as much as possible, figure out where our hiccups are and our speed bumps, and then adjust accordingly, and try to make this as successful as a program in the long term as possible. The Zero Waste Committee, along with the Board of Health, will continue to work on that. Next up is the middle school site. And just a refresher on that, the joint subcommittee of the town council held multiple public meetings this year to present and hear community input about the potential zoning process. They worked with an outside firm called VHB. The planning board was passed recommended language concerning the zoning of the site earlier this year. Again, the building still remains largely unoccupied and the town pays insurance on the vacant building. And there is a joint meeting this Thursday on April 22nd between the planning board and the town council, where there will be a discussion about zoning language and potentially in the near future, some type of vote about updated language on the parcels that the middle school site is on. In terms of an update on the Center Business District, we're in phase 5 of the program. You can find updates about the program on this site, which is a subset of the town's website. If you go to the Town of Winthrop website, right on the top, CBD project is one of the pull down options. If you click that, you can get up-to-date information and see about the phases and streets that are impacted. But we are in phase 5 and working through phase 5. The work has begun again this year. It's anticipated to be completed by the end of this calendar year. And for the most up-to-date information, it's on the website. It gets distributed in the town manager's blog as well. And there's 2-week look-aheads that we are consistently distributing in advance of any work. For departmental updates, just in the essence of time, I will hit these very quickly. There's a new process with the waterway stickers where what we're doing is things go to the treasurer, then it moves from the treasurer's office to the assessor's office for verification, and then the paperwork goes to the harbor master. This is going to clean up some confusion that has happened where people kind of show up to the harbor master looking for tickets or give the assessor's office a hard time. This should clean up this process. And all the department heads involved in this believes that this is a smoother process that's been rolled out so far. Health and Human Services, and Meredith can talk about this more when she has the opportunity with the finance committee, but this is kind of a visualization of what I was talking about with the hub and spoke model of what the department will look like. When you look at the middle, that's really what Meredith would be responsible for. And then all these little nodes on the outside are different services where she can distribute and point people in the correct direction of to have services. So domestic violence, youth services, mental health, substance use, housing stability, food stability. They're really important stuff in town. So this is health and human services. We're also going to have the veterans in there. Council on Aging as well. Ro and Kathy doing great work with those, as I noted in the video. And I think they're going to work together as a larger group to some continued success. Lastly, with the library, the summer reading program kicks off July 9th and goes through August 20th. Doing some of the remote stuff again, but looking forward to what Mary Lou and the new library director, who will be joining us in the near future, will be rolling out for the community. Then lastly, what is the Stand, Speak, and Act transformative theater piece. This is an active bystander training workshop. There was success with the first time this was offered, and it's being offered again tomorrow night from 7 to 8:30 over Zoom. Good stuff to kind of learn about how to intervene in things that you think are wrong sometimes when someone may be giving someone else a hard time and it's in public, and sometimes you bite your tongue, but this helps people realize that they don't necessarily need to bite their tongue all of the time. And with that, that's the spring forum. Sorry for the rest nature of the presentation, but I know that we've been listening to presentations for the last hour and a half, and we can open up to questions now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Austin and Anna. I'm going to open it up to questions from the council first, even though the council knows they can directly talk to Austin and Anna if they have questions that they need answered without putting it out through the this forum. If any public want to call in, the number is 1-301-715-8592 with an ID number of 844-967-40096#. I'd like to remind everybody of rule number 11 of the Winthrop Town Council, which applies to decorum. And discourse at council meetings shall be marked by courtesy and respect at all times, even in the face of disagreement. Discussions shall be centered on issues at hand, and personal attacks shall not be tolerated on any individual. So I'm saying that so the Larissa or Denise, if you see someone that is making a personal attack, you need to shut them off immediately. Okay, and that will be going forward. I just want to remind everybody of that rule. I don't think we've talked about that rule in a long time. Okay, moving forward, any questions from the council? Okay. Any questions from the public? I saw there were 2 hands up earlier.
Yep, we have one hand by the person with the last 4 digits, 1612.
Thank you. Go right ahead. Please identify yourself.
If you're calling on the phone, I think it's *9 to unmute yourself.
Hello?
The person with the last 4 digits of your phone number, 1612. Do you want to unmute your phone? Do you have public comment?
They have to start 6 times.
Well, there's *6 raises your hand, *9 unmutes yourself. This person just might have hit the buttons by accident. I don't know.
Okay, the hand is gone. Is there any other
I don't see any other hands.
questions or public comment? Okay, hearing none. I will close the spring forum. And again, I want to thank Anna for all the work you've done for us for the past couple of years. We appreciated having you in our town. And I think you are going to be a great asset to wherever you go in your future endeavors. And we wish you all the luck in the world. You're muted.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And you're all very welcome. Again, I really enjoyed working with all of you. And I wish all of you well, and I wish the community well. I think it's a scary but exciting time right now.
Thank you. Okay, if no one else has anything, this meeting is now adjourned, closed.
Good night. Thank you.
Have a nice night, everybody.
Be safe, all.